The stagecoach door swung open, and Darius Callan's 5 years of waiting ended in a way no one expected. The woman who stepped down wasn't the confident mail-order bride he'd imagined. She was trembling, tear-streaked, clutching a battered case like her life depended on it. The whole town of Willow Creek had gathered to watch, and their faces said it all. Something was wrong. Darius saw the shame in her eyes, the way she flinched when men stared. He could walk away right now. Everyone would understand. Instead, he did something that would change both their lives forever. If you're curious how a disgraced woman and a silent rancher built something real from nothing, stick with me until the end. And hey, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's get into it. The Wyoming Territory didn't forgive mistakes. Darius Callan had learned that 5 years ago when he'd bought 300 acres of scrubland 20 miles from Willow Creek and disappeared into work so hard it left no room for memory. He was 32 now, built like someone who'd spent years wrestling fence posts into frozen ground, with hands that had forgotten what softness felt like. His hair needed cutting, his beard needed trimming. None of it mattered out here where the only witnesses were cattle and wind. But today mattered. Today, the stagecoach was bringing his bride. He stood outside Willow Creek's general store, hat in hand, trying not to look as nervous as he felt. The afternoon sun beat down on the dusty main street. A handful of townspeople had gathered, not because they cared about Darius, but because a mail-order bride was the most interesting thing that had happened in months. Mrs. Garrett, the banker's wife, stood with 2 other women under a storefront awning, fanning herself with studied disinterest that fooled no one. Tom Bradley, who ran the livery, leaned against a post whittling a stick he didn't need whittled. Even Reverend Mills had found reason to be outside, though he pretended to be examining the church door hinges. They were all waiting to see what kind of woman would agree to marry a man she'd never met. Darius had written 4 letters. She'd written 3 back. Her name was Lynn May. She was 26 from Philadelphia and worked as a seamstress. Her handwriting was careful, her words practical. She'd asked about the weather, the nearest town, whether he had livestock. She hadn't asked whether he was kind or handsome or anything that might have revealed what she was really thinking. He'd sent money for passage. She'd accepted. That was the extent of their courtship. The stagecoach appeared as a dust cloud on the eastern road, growing larger until Darius could make out the horses, then the driver, then the coach itself rocking on bad suspension. His chest tightened. His mouth went dry. This was actually happening. The coach pulled up in front of the general store with a creak of leather and wood. The driver, a weathered man named Hutchins, who Darius had seen around town, set the brake and climbed down without ceremony. "Afternoon, Callan," Hutchins said, not quite meeting his eyes. "Got your package?" Package, like she was cargo. Hutchins opened the coach door, and for a moment nothing happened. Then a small gloved hand appeared on the doorframe, gripping so tight Darius could see the tension even from 10 feet away. A woman stepped down. The first thing Darius noticed was that she was Chinese. The second thing was that she'd been crying. The third thing, and this hit him like a fist to the gut, was that she looked terrified. Lynn May stood on the street with her head slightly bowed, one hand clutching a worn leather case, the other pressed against her stomach like she might be sick. She wore a dark blue traveling dress that had seen better days, dusty from the road. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple knot. She didn't look at him. She didn't look at anyone. But everyone was looking at her. The silence stretched out, broken only by the stamp of horses and the rustle of Mrs. Garrett's fan snapping shut. "Well," someone muttered. Darius didn't see who. He took a step forward, and Lynn May flinched. The movement was slight, barely there, but Darius caught it. So did half the town. He stopped, holding his hat in both hands now, suddenly aware of how big he was, how rough he must look to her. 5 years alone on a ranch didn't exactly polish a man. "Miss Lynn?" His voice came out rougher than he meant it to. She nodded once, still not meeting his eyes. A tear tracked down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly, like it had betrayed her. "I'm Darius Callan." Another nod. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. In his head, and he'd played this out more times than he'd admit, she would step down confident, maybe a little nervous, but ready. They'd exchange pleasantries. He'd take her bag. They'd ride out to the ranch and figure things out like adults. This woman looked like she was barely holding herself together. "You need a moment?" he asked, keeping his voice low. She shook her head, but her hand tightened on the case. Behind him, Darius heard Mrs. Garrett whisper something to her companions. He caught the word disgraceful and felt his jaw tighten. "Come on," he said to Lin May, gesturing toward the wagon he'd parked near the livery. "Let's get out of here." She followed him, eyes down, steps small and careful. The townspeople watched every move. Darius wanted to tell them all to go to hell, but that would only make things worse. Instead, he focused on getting Lin May into the wagon without incident. He set her case in the back, then offered his hand to help her up. She hesitated before taking it. Her hand was small and cold even through the glove. She climbed into the seat quickly, sitting as far from him as the bench allowed. Darius walked around to the driver's side, aware of a dozen sets of eyes tracking him. He climbed up, took the reins, and got them moving without another word to anyone. The ride out of town felt like it took hours. Lin May sat rigid beside him, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead. Darius kept his eyes on the road, giving her space, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. She wasn't what he'd expected, that part was obvious. But it wasn't her appearance that unsettled him. It was the fear, the shame, the way she'd stepped off that coach looking like she'd already lost everything that mattered. Something had happened to her, something bad. They were a mile out of town before she spoke. "I can leave." Her voice was quiet, accented slightly, but steady. Darius glanced over. She was still looking straight ahead. "What?" "If you want me to leave, I understand. I have money for passage back to—" She stopped. "Somewhere." "Why would I want you to leave?" She didn't answer. Her throat worked like she was trying to swallow something down. Darius pulled the wagon to a stop. The prairie stretched out around them, empty and vast. Lin May tensed, and he realized she thought he was about to do something. Abandon her here, maybe. The thought made him sick. "Look," he said, turning to face her. "I don't know what happened to you, and I'm not going to ask unless you want to tell me. But I paid for your passage, and you came all this way, and I'm not the kind of man who goes back on his word. You're here. We had an agreement. That's good enough for me." She finally looked at him then, really looked at him for the first time. Her eyes were dark and searching, like she was trying to figure out if he was lying. "You don't know," she said. "Know what?" "What they say about me." "Lady, I don't even know who they are." "In Philadelphia." Her voice cracked slightly. There was a man with influence. He wanted me to—" She stopped, pressing her lips together. "I refused him. He made sure everyone believed I was the one who—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "It doesn't matter. The story spread. I lost my position, my reputation, everything." Darius let that sink in. A powerful man. A false accusation. A woman with nowhere to go. "So you came out here," he said. "I had nothing left." She said it simply, like it was a fact. "When I saw your advertisement, I thought—" She looked away. "I thought I could start over where no one knew. But now you know, and I understand if you— Do you lie?" She blinked at him. "What?" Simple question. "Do you lie?" "No." "Do you steal?" "No." "Can you work?" "Yes." "Then I don't see the problem." Lin May stared at him like he'd spoken another language. "You don't care what people say?" "People say a lot of things. Most of it's horseshit." He picked up the reins again. "Out here, what matters is whether you pull your weight and keep your word. You do that, we'll be fine." "But the town doesn't live on my land. I do. You will. What they think stops at the property line." For the first time since she'd stepped off that coach, something shifted in Lin May's face. Not hope exactly, but something like it. A crack in the wall. "You're serious," she said. Dead serious. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking. "I will work hard. I promise you that. I believe you." They rode in silence for a while. The sun was starting its descent toward the horizon, painting the grassland gold. Darius could feel Lin May slowly relaxing beside him, the tension in her shoulders easing degree by degree. "The ranch," she said eventually. "What is it like?" Darius considered how to answer that. The truth was, it was rough. 300 acres, half of it rocky scrubland, the other half marginally better grazing land. A house he'd built himself that was solid but plain. a barn that leaked when it rained hard, 30 head of cattle that required constant work. No neighbors for miles. "It's not fancy," he said. "House is small, but tight. One bedroom upstairs, main room downstairs with the kitchen. Barn's decent. Land's tough, but workable. It's quiet." "Quiet sounds good." He glanced at her. She meant it. "You ever worked a ranch before?" "No, but I learned quickly." "You'll have to. It's just me out there." "Now it'll be both of us. There's no hired hands, no help. Everything that needs doing, we do." "I understand. I'm not trying to scare you off, just being straight with you." "I appreciate that." She paused. "May I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why did you advertise for a bride? You could have—" She stopped, like she wasn't sure how to phrase it. "Could have what? Found someone local?" Darius let out a dry laugh. "Tried that 5 years ago. Didn't work out. Decided I'd rather know up front what someone's getting into than have them figure it out later and leave." "What happened?" It was his turn to be uncomfortable. "Got engaged to a woman from town. Sarah Hendricks. She liked the idea of a ranch until she actually saw it. Lasted 3 months before she called it off." He shrugged. "Can't blame her. This life isn't for everyone." "But you stayed. Bought the land with everything I had. Didn't have anywhere else to go." He looked over at her. "Guess we're not that different." Lin May was quiet for a moment. Then, "When I saw your letters, I thought you seemed honest, direct. I liked that. Not much point in being anything else." "No," she agreed. "There isn't." The ranch came into view as they crested a low rise. It wasn't much, a simple 2-story house with a porch, a barn, a few outbuildings, corrals holding cattle. But the land around it rolled out in every direction, open and free, with the mountains visible in the far distance. Darius felt Lin May go still beside him. "This is all yours?" she asked. "Ours now. That was the agreement, wasn't it? You marry me, you get half of everything." "I didn't think you actually meant—" "I don't say things I don't mean." He pulled the wagon up in front of the house. "Like I said, partnership. We work together, share the load, build something. That's the deal." He climbed down and went around to help her, but she'd already gotten down herself, standing there looking at the house like she wasn't sure it was real. "It needs work," Darius admitted. "Inside, too. I'm not much for decorating. It's solid," she said. "That's what matters." He grabbed her case from the wagon and led her inside. The main room was exactly what he'd described. Functional, but spare. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. A simple kitchen area occupied another corner. A table with 2 chairs. That was it. "Upstairs is the bedroom," Darius said, setting her case down. "You can have it. I'll sleep down here." Lin May turned to him, confused. "But we're to be married." "Yeah, but you just got here. Figure you might want some space to get your bearings before we... you know." He felt his face heat up and cleared his throat. "Just seems right." She studied him for a long moment, and Darius had the uncomfortable feeling she could see right through him. "You're not what I expected either," she said quietly. "Good, unexpected, or bad unexpected?" "I don't know yet." "Fair enough." "There's a washroom out back," he said. "Water's from the well. I'll get a fire going, make some food. You probably want to clean up." "Thank you." She picked up her case and headed for the stairs, then paused with one hand on the railing. "Darius?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for not asking more about Philadelphia, about everything." "Figure you'll tell me if you want to. If you don't, that's fine too." She nodded and continued upstairs. Darius stood alone in the main room, listening to her footsteps creak across the floor above him, and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. This wasn't the straightforward arrangement he'd imagined. This was complicated, messy, human. He went to start the fire. Lin May sat on the edge of the bed in the small upstairs room and let herself shake. She'd held it together through the entire journey, the 3-day stagecoach ride, the awful moment when the coach had rolled into Willow Creek, and she'd seen all those faces staring at her, the terror that Darius would take one look at her and send her back. Now alone she could fall apart, except she was too tired to fall apart properly. She was too tired to do anything but sit there and try to process what had just happened. He hadn't sent her back. She'd told him the truth, or enough of it, and he hadn't cared. Lin May didn't know what to do with that. In Philadelphia, the scandal had destroyed her in a matter of weeks. Mr. Whitmore, the wealthy client who'd propositioned her in his study, who'd grabbed her wrist when she'd tried to leave, who'd whispered what he wanted to do to her, had made sure everyone believed she'd been the one to seduce him. His wife had believed it. The other seamstresses had believed it. Even Mrs. Chen, the shop owner who'd employed Lin Mei for 6 years, had let her go without a word of defense. "I can't have that kind of talk associated with my business," Mrs. Dou Chen had said, not quite meeting Lin Mei's eyes. "You understand." Lin Mei had understood perfectly. The truth didn't matter. Only reputation mattered, and hers was gone. She'd spent 2 months applying for positions and being turned away. Then her savings had started to run out. Then she'd seen the advertisement in the newspaper, folded and left on a bench at the train station like someone had forgotten it. Rancher seeking wife, Wyoming territory, partnership offered. Right to Darius Callan, Willow Creek. She'd stared at that advertisement for 20 minutes before folding it into her pocket. She'd told herself she was being ridiculous. She didn't know this man. Wyoming might as well be the moon. But what other options did she have? Stay in Philadelphia and starve? Try another city where the rumors would eventually follow? So she'd written the letter, and he'd written back. And now she was here, in a house that smelled like wood smoke and leather, with a man who'd just offered her half of everything he owned like it was nothing. Lin Mei pulled off her gloves and looked at her hands. They were soft, uncalloused. Seamstress hands. She had no idea how to work a ranch. She didn't know how to ride a horse or herd cattle or do any of the things that would be expected of her here. But she'd learn. She had to. Because going back wasn't an option. Dinner was venison stew and bread that was slightly burned on the bottom. Darius had never claimed to be a cook. Lin Mei ate without complaint, which he appreciated. They sat across from each other at the small table, the silence between them not quite comfortable but not hostile either. Darius tried to think of something to say that wouldn't sound stupid. "Wedding set for Saturday," he said finally. "Reverend Mills agreed to do it at the church. Needs to be official for the land agreement to work." Lin Mei nodded, setting down her spoon. "That's 3 days." "Yeah, gives you time to settle in, change your mind if you want to." "I won't change my mind." "You might." "I won't." She met his eyes. "I told you I would do this, and I will." "Even after seeing the place?" "Especially after seeing it." She looked around the room. "It's honest. You're honest. That's more than I had in Philadelphia." Darius didn't know what to say to that, so he focused on his stew. "Can I ask you something?" Lin Mei said. "Sure." "Why did you really send for a bride?" "The truth." He set down his spoon and leaned back in his chair. "Already told you. Got tired of being alone. Figured a partnership made sense." "But why like this? Why not try again with someone local?" "Because local means expectations, means history, means everyone watching to see if you measure up to whatever they think you should be." He rubbed a hand over his face. "Out here, we can be whoever the hell we want." That seemed better. Lin Mei considered that. "And you don't mind that I'm—" She gestured at herself. "Chinese?" "Yes." "Why would I mind?" "Some people do. Some people are idiots." He picked up his spoon again. "I care whether you can work and whether you keep your word. Rest is just noise." "You say that now." "I'll say it next week too, and the week after that." She almost smiled. Almost. They finished eating in silence. Darius washed the dishes while Lin Mei sat by the fire, staring into the flames. When he was done, he grabbed a blanket from the chest in the corner. "I'll sleep down here," he said. "Holler if you need anything." "You don't have to sleep on the floor in your own home." "Won't be for long. Few days and we'll be married. Then we'll figure out the rest." Lin Mei stood, wrapping her arms around herself. "Darius?" "Yeah?" "What if I'm terrible at this? At ranch work, I mean." "Then you'll learn. Same as I did." "But what if I can't?" "You will." "How do you know?" He looked at her standing there in the firelight, this woman who'd traveled 2,000 miles to escape her past, and thought about the fear in her eyes when she'd stepped off that coach. "Because you came here," he said. "That took guts. Everything after this is just details." She didn't say anything, but something in her expression softened. "Get some sleep," Darius said. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." She nodded and headed for the stairs, pausing at the bottom to look back at him. "Good night, Darius." Good night. He listened to her footsteps fade upstairs, then lay down on the floor by the fire and stared at the ceiling. 3 days until they were married. 3 days to figure out if this was the best decision he'd ever made or the biggest mistake. Either way, he'd made a promise. And Darius Callan didn't go back on his word, even when he had no idea what the hell he was doing. Lin May woke before dawn to the sound of boots on floorboards below. She lay still for a moment, disoriented, before remembering where she was. Wyoming. A ranch. A house that belonged to a man she'd known for less than 12 hours. A man she was going to marry in 2 days. She sat up slowly, her body aching from the journey. Through the small window, the sky was just starting to lighten, turning from black to deep blue. She could hear Darius moving around downstairs, the clank of metal on metal, the creak of the door opening and closing. She dressed quickly in the dim light, braiding her hair with practiced efficiency. Her fingers were steady this morning. That was something. When she came downstairs, Darius was gone. The fire was already going, a pot of coffee sitting on the stove. She poured herself a cup and stood by the window, looking out at the land. In daylight, it was different, vast, empty. The kind of empty that made Philadelphia feel like a fever dream, all those buildings and people and noise compressed into something that no longer seemed real. The door opened and Darius came in carrying a pail of milk. He stopped when he saw her. "You're up early," he said. "So are you." Cattle don't care what time it is. He set the pail on the counter. "You drink coffee?" "Yes." "Good. You're going to need it." He poured himself a cup and leaned against the counter, studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Well enough." "Bed's not great. I built it myself, not exactly a craftsman." "It's fine." They stood there drinking coffee in silence. Lin May realized this was going to be their life. These quiet mornings, these simple exchanges. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it made her anxious. "What do you need me to do today?" she asked. Darius raised an eyebrow. "You don't waste time." "You said everything needs doing. So what needs doing?" He set down his cup and considered. "Honestly, I don't know what you can do yet. What are you good at?" "Sewing, mending, basic cooking, cleaning." "Can you ride?" "No." "Shoot?" "No." "Milk a cow?" "No." Darius rubbed the back of his neck. "All right, so we start with what you can do and work up from there. House could use a proper cleaning. I'm not great at that. Clothes need mending, and if you can cook better than me, that'd be a blessing." "I can do all of that." "Good. I've got fence repairs to do on the north pasture. Take me most of the day. You work on what you want to work on. Tonight I'll teach you how to milk Bessie." "Bessie?" "The cow. She's mean, but she tolerates me." Lin May almost smiled. "Does everything here tolerate you?" "Pretty much. I'm not much for conversation, so the animals don't mind me." "And what about people?" Darius picked up his hat from the table. "People are harder. That's why I live out here." He headed for the door, then paused. "Lin May?" "Yes?" "You don't have to prove anything today. Take your time getting your bearings." "I'd rather stay busy." He nodded like he understood that completely. "Fair enough. There's bread and eggs if you get hungry. I'll be back around noon." Then he was gone, and Lin May was alone in the house. She stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle around her. Then she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The house wasn't dirty exactly, but it had the look of a place where a man lived alone and didn't see the point in fussing. Dust had accumulated in corners. The floor needed scrubbing. The windows were streaked. The kitchen area was functional but disorganized. Lin May started with the dishes, heating water on the stove and washing everything she could find. Then she swept the floor, moving the furniture to get underneath. She found a rag and tackled the windows, scrubbing until they were clear enough to actually see through. By the time the sun was fully up, she'd worked up a sweat despite the cool morning air. She took a break to eat some bread and look around at what she'd accomplished. The room looked different, brighter. More like a home and less like a place someone just slept. She went upstairs next. The bedroom was sparse. A bed, a dresser, a chair. But it was clean enough. She made the bed properly, folding the blankets the way her mother had taught her years ago. The thought of her mother made her chest tighten, so she pushed it away and kept moving. In the dresser, she found Darius's clothes, work shirts, an extra pair of pants, socks that needed darning. She gathered them up and brought them downstairs, setting up a mending station by the window where the light was good. The work was familiar, comforting. Her hands knew what to do even when her mind was spinning. Needle in, needle out, pull the thread tight, move to the next hole. She'd been sewing for 2 hours when she heard a horse approaching. She looked up, suddenly tense. It wasn't noon yet. Darius had said he'd be gone longer. Through the window, she saw a woman on horseback, older, wearing a riding habit that had seen better days. The woman dismounted with the ease of someone who'd been doing it her whole life and tied her horse to the porch rail. Lin Mei set down her mending and stood. Her heart was hammering. The knock came a moment later. Lin Mei opened the door. The woman was in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, and eyes that took in everything at once. She looked Lin Mei up and down without bothering to hide it. "You're the bride," the woman said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. I'm Martha Brennan. I own the spread east of here." She didn't wait for an invitation, just walked right in. "Wanted to see for myself what kind of woman Darius Callan dragged out here." Lin Mei closed the door, her guard up. "He didn't drag me. I came willingly." "That's so." Martha looked around the room, taking in the cleaned windows and organized kitchen. "Well, you work fast. Place hasn't looked this good since Darius built it. Was there something you needed, Mrs. Brennan?" "It's Martha, and yeah, there's something I need. I need to know if you're going to stick around or run off in a month like the last one." "I'm not Sarah Hendricks." "No, you're not. Sarah was local. Sarah knew what she was getting into and still couldn't handle it." Martha's eyes narrowed. "You're from back east, city girl. What makes you think you can make it out here?" Lin Mei felt the familiar burn of shame and anger mixed together. She'd faced this in Philadelphia, the judgment, the assumptions, the certainty that she didn't belong. "I don't know if I can," she said evenly, "but I'm going to try." Martha studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. "Good answer. Most people would have tried to convince me they'd be fine. You're honest. I like that." Lin Mei didn't know what to say. "Look," Martha said, her tone shifting to something almost kind. "Darius is a good man. Quiet as a damn grave and about as fun at parties, but he's solid. He doesn't deserve to get his heart kicked around again. So if you're planning to bail, do it before Saturday." "I'm not planning to bail." "Yeah? What are you planning?" Lin Mei thought about that. What was she planning? Survival. A fresh start. A life where her past didn't define her future. "I'm planning to keep my word," she said. Martha nodded slowly. "All right then. In that case, you're going to need help. This life isn't easy, especially for someone who's never done it before." "Darius said he'd teach me." "Darius can teach you how to fix a fence and herd cattle. He can't teach you how to deal with the town." "The town doesn't matter." "The hell it doesn't." Martha walked over to the window and looked out at the land. "You saw how they looked at you yesterday. That's not going away. You're different. They don't like different." "I noticed." "So here's what you need to know. Mrs. Garrett runs the social scene. She's a gossip and a snob, and she'll make your life hell if you let her. Tom Bradley at the livery is harmless but dumb as a post. Reverend Mills means well, but he's weak. The only people worth knowing are the Brennans. That's me and my husband Jack, and maybe old Doc Morrison if you ever need medical help." "Why are you telling me this?" Martha turned back to her. "Because I've lived out here for 30 years, and I know what it takes to survive. It's not just work. It's knowing who to trust and who to avoid. It's having at least one person who'll stand with you when things get ugly." "And you're offering to be that person?" "I'm offering to not be your enemy. That's more than most people will give you." Lin Mei didn't know whether to be grateful or insulted. She settled for cautious. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I'm not doing this out of kindness. I'm doing it because Darius needs someone, and you might actually be tough enough to stick around." "Might." "I am." "We'll see." Martha headed for the door, then paused. "One more thing. Whatever happened to you back east, whatever brought you out here, that's your business. But people are going to ask. They're going to want to know. You need to decide now how much you're willing to tell them." "I won't lie." "Didn't say you should. But you don't owe anyone your whole story either. Remember that." She left before Lin Mei could respond. Lin Mei stood in the empty room, processing what had just happened. She wasn't sure if Martha Brennan was an ally or just someone who didn't want drama in her backyard. Either way, she'd been right about one thing. Lin May needed to decide what she was willing to share. Because the truth would destroy her here, just like it had destroyed her in Philadelphia. Darius came back at noon covered in dust and sweat, looking like he'd wrestled the fence into submission rather than repaired it. He washed up at the pump outside, then came in and stopped dead when he saw the room. "What did you do?" he asked. "Cleaned." "I can see that." He looked around like he was seeing the place for the first time. "Damn. Is that good or bad?" "Good. Real good." He grabbed the coffee pot and poured himself a cup, drinking it down despite the fact that it had to be lukewarm by now. "Had a visitor?" "How did you know?" "Saw the tracks." "Martha Brennan?" "Yes." "What did she want?" "To make sure I wasn't going to run off like Sarah." Darius grimaced. "Sounds like Martha." "She also warned me about the town." "Yeah, she would." He set down the cup. "Look, about the town. I don't care what they think. You might start to care once you're there more often." "Then I won't go there often." Darius looked at her, and Lin May saw something like respect in his expression. "You're tougher than you look," he said. "I have to be." "Yeah, I'm starting to see that." He grabbed a piece of bread from the counter. "I've got to head back out. Fence isn't done. But tonight I'll teach you to milk the cow like I promised. I'll be ready." He left again, and Lin May went back to her mending. But her hands were shaking now, and she had to stop for a moment to steady them. She'd been in Wyoming less than 24 hours, and already people were watching her, judging her, deciding whether she belonged, just like Philadelphia. Except here, she had Darius. And Darius didn't seem to care what anyone thought. That had to count for something. Evening came with a chill that cut through the afternoon warmth. Lin May had spent the rest of the day organizing the kitchen and preparing a stew that was marginally better than what Darius had made the night before. When he came in, he looked exhausted. "Fence is done," he said, washing his hands in the basin. "Tomorrow I'll show you the property lines. Day after that, we get married." The words hung in the air between them. "Are you nervous?" Lin May asked before she could stop herself. Darius dried his hands on a rag and turned to face her. "About getting married? Or about getting married to you?" "Either. Both." "Honestly? Yeah, but not for the reasons you'd think." "What reasons?" He pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. "I'm not good with people. Never have been. I can work a ranch, fix a fence, handle cattle, but talking? Figuring out what someone needs? I'm terrible at that stuff. You've been fine with me. Because you're direct. You say what you mean. But most people aren't like that. They talk around things, get offended by stuff I don't even see coming." Lin May sat down across from him. "Is that what happened with Sarah?" "Partly. She wanted me to be someone I'm not. More social, more charming, more everything." He shrugged. "I tried. Didn't work." "I don't need you to be charming." "No?" "No, I need you to be honest. You've been that since I arrived." "That's about all I know how to be." "Then we'll be fine." Darius looked at her for a long moment. "You really believe that?" "I have to." He understood what she meant. Neither of them had anywhere else to go. After dinner, Darius led her out to the barn. The sun had set, and the sky was turning that deep purple that came right before full dark. Lantern light spilled from the barn door, casting long shadows across the dirt. Inside, it smelled like hay and animals and leather. A cow stood in one of the stalls, chewing cud and watching them with disinterest. "That's Bessie," Darius said. "She's got opinions, but she's reliable." Lin May approached cautiously. The cow was bigger up close than she'd expected. "You ever touch a cow before?" Darius asked. "No." "Go ahead. She won't bite." Lin May reached out slowly and placed her hand on the cow's side. The hide was warm and rough, the animal solid and real in a way that made everything else feel less immediate. Now, milking's not hard, but it takes practice. Darius grabbed a stool and a pail and positioned himself next to the cow. "You sit here, get a rhythm going, squeeze from the top, pull down. Like this." He demonstrated, and milk streamed into the pail with a steady rhythm. He made it look easy. Your turn, he said, standing up. Lin Mei sat down on the stool, feeling awkward and out of place. She reached for the udder, then hesitated. It's fine, Darius said. She knows you're learning. Lin Mei tried to copy what he'd done. Nothing happened. Squeeze harder, Darius said. She's not going to break. She tried again. A weak stream of milk dribbled out. There you go. Now keep that rhythm. Don't think about it too much. She worked at it, her hands quickly starting to cramp. The milk came in spurts and stops, nothing like the steady stream Darius had produced. Bessie shifted her weight, and Lin Mei froze. You're doing fine, Darius said. Just keep going. By the time the pail was half full, Lin Mei's hands were aching and she was sweating despite the cool evening air. But she'd done it. Not bad for a first try, Darius said. Give it a few weeks and you'll be faster than me. I doubt that. I don't. He took the pail. Come on, I'll show you how to feed the chickens before it gets too dark. They spent the next hour going through the evening routine, feeding the animals, checking the water troughs, making sure everything was secure for the night. It was simple work, repetitive, but Lin Mei found a strange comfort in it. By the time they got back to the house, full dark had settled. They sat by the fire, tired but not ready for sleep yet. Tomorrow I want to show you something, Darius said. What? The whole property, all 300 acres, so you know what you're getting into. You keep saying that like you're trying to scare me off. Maybe I am. Better to know now than a year from now when you're miserable. I won't be miserable. How do you know? Lin Mei stared into the fire. Because I've already been miserable. This is different. Different how? In Philadelphia, I was trapped. Here, I'm free. Darius was quiet for a moment. You really see it that way? Yes. Even though you're marrying a stranger and living in the middle of nowhere? Especially because of that. She looked at him. In the city, everyone knew my business. Everyone had an opinion. Here, it's just us. That's not a prison. That's freedom. Darius nodded slowly. I never thought about it like that. But yeah, that's why I bought this place, so I could live on my own terms. So we're not that different after all. No, I guess we're not. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lin Mei asked the question that had been bothering her all day. What do I call you? After we're married, I mean. Husband seems formal. Darius seems too casual. Call me whatever feels right. I don't care about formality. That's not helpful. All right? What do you want to be called? Lin Mei considered. Just Lin Mei. Not Mrs. Callan, not wife, just me. Then that's what you'll be. He stood up and stretched. I'm going to turn in. Big day tomorrow. Darius? Yeah? What happens after we're married? I mean, really happens. We share the bedroom then? His face colored slightly. I figure we'll take that as it comes. No rush. We've got time to figure out how this works. I don't expect anything except partnership. Rest is up to both of us. He met her eyes. That all right with you? Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me for being decent. That's just baseline. He headed upstairs, leaving Lin Mei alone by the fire. She stayed there for a long time, watching the flames dance, thinking about the wedding that was less than 2 days away. She wasn't in love with Darius Callan. She barely knew him, but there was something solid about him, something that made her believe this could work. And right now, belief was all she had. The next day dawned clear and cold. Darius was already up when Lin Mei came downstairs, packing supplies into saddlebags. We're riding? She asked. Only way to see the whole property. Don't worry, I've got an old mare that's gentle, won't throw you. I've never ridden before. I know, that's why we're starting with Daisy. An hour later, Lin Mei was sitting on a horse for the first time in her life, gripping the saddle horn so tight her knuckles were white. Darius sat easy on his own horse, watching her with what might have been amusement. Relax, he said. She can feel when you're tense. I am tense. Yeah, I noticed. Just breathe. Let your body move with hers. Easy for him to say. Lin Mei felt like she was balanced on top of a mountain that could move at any second. But Daisy was patient. She walked slowly, following Darius's horse without any prompting. And gradually, Lin Mei's death grip on the saddle loosened. They rode north, Darius pointing out landmarks and boundaries. The creek that marked the eastern edge, the rocky outcrop to the west, the line of cottonwoods that separated his land from Martha Brennan's. It's not the prettiest land, Darius said. Too rocky for farming, but it's good for cattle. And it's ours. Ours. The word still felt strange to Lin May. They stopped at the northern boundary, where the land rose into low hills. From here you could see for miles, nothing but grass and sky and the distant mountains. This is what I bought 5 years ago, Darius said. Everyone thought I was crazy, too far from town, too rough, but I didn't care. I wanted space. It's beautiful. You think so? Yes. And she meant it. There was something about the emptiness that called to her. Room to breathe, room to be someone new. They ate the lunch Darius had packed, bread and cheese and dried meat, sitting on rocks overlooking the valley. Tomorrow we get married, Darius said. You scared? Terrified. Me too. Really? Yeah. Last time I stood in front of that church, it ended with Sarah calling everything off. Hard not to think about that. Lin May hadn't considered that he might be carrying his own fears into this. I'm not Sarah, she said. I know. But you're still a stranger. We're both taking a hell of a risk here. We are. He looked at her. Any regrets yet? Lin May thought about Philadelphia, about the shame and the whispers and the certainty that her life was over. Then she looked at the land spread out before them, wide open and full of possibility. No regrets, she said. Good. Me neither. They rode back as the sun started to set, taking their time. By the time they reached the barn, Lin May's legs were shaking from holding herself on the horse, but she'd made it. You did good, Darius said, helping her dismount. Better than I expected. I didn't fall off. That's the important part. She fed Daisy an apple while Darius unsaddled both horses. Then they walked back to the house together in the fading light. Inside, Lin May made dinner while Darius sat at the table doing paperwork, bills and accounts that he'd been putting off. Can you read? He asked suddenly. Yes? Can you? Yeah, but I'm not great with numbers. Sarah used to handle this stuff. I could do it, if you want. He looked up, surprised. Yeah? I kept books for the seamstress shop in Philadelphia. I'm good with accounting. That'd be helpful. I hate this part. Lin May came over and looked at the papers spread across the table. It was a mess, but not an unfixable one. I'll organize this tomorrow, she said, after the wedding. You sure? That's a hell of a way to spend your wedding day. Better than sitting around being nervous. Darius smiled, a real smile this time, not just the half grimace she'd seen before. You're practical. I like that. Someone has to be. They ate dinner, and Lin May found herself actually relaxing. The silence between them was easier now, comfortable almost. What time is the wedding? She asked. 10 o'clock. We'll ride into town early. Reverend Mills wanted to talk to us first. About what? Marriage, commitment, the usual church stuff. Will there be other people there? Probably. Small town. Word gets around. Lin May's stomach tightened at the thought of facing all those eyes again. Hey, Darius said, you don't have to worry about them. We say our vows, sign the papers, and leave. That's it. And then? And then we come back here and figure out the rest of our lives. Put like that, it sounded almost simple. That night, Lin May lay in bed, unable to sleep. Tomorrow she would become someone's wife. Tomorrow her life would change in ways she couldn't predict. But for the first time in months, she felt something other than fear. She felt ready. Morning came too fast. Lin May dressed in the only good dress she owned, a simple gray silk that had survived the journey better than most of her belongings. She braided her hair carefully, pinning it up the way her mother had taught her. Her hands shook as she fastened the last pin. Today, she would become a wife. The thought sat heavy in her chest, not quite fear, but something close to it. She looked at herself in the small mirror above the dresser and barely recognized the woman staring back. 4 days ago, she'd been in Philadelphia, destroyed and desperate. Now she was about to marry a man she'd known for 3 days. The insanity of it should have terrified her. Instead, she felt strangely calm. Downstairs, Darius was already dressed in clean clothes, his beard trimmed, his hair combed back. He looked uncomfortable in anything that wasn't work clothes, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he wanted to bolt. You look nice, Lin Mei said. I look like I'm going to a funeral. He tugged at his collar. You ready? As ready as I'll ever be. They rode to town in the wagon, neither of them speaking much. The morning was cool and clear, the kind of day that felt like it should matter. Lin Mei watched the landscape roll by, committing it to memory. After today, this would be her home. Not just Darius's home. Hers. Willow Creek came into view, and Lin Mei's calm evaporated. The main street was busier than it had been 3 days ago. Market day, probably. People turned to look as the wagon passed. She saw Mrs. Garrett standing outside the general store, whispering to another woman. Saw Tom Bradley at the livery, watching with open curiosity. Ignore them, Darius muttered. I'm trying. He pulled the wagon up in front of the church, a simple white building with a bell tower. Reverend Mills was waiting on the steps, a thin man in his 50s with kind eyes and a nervous disposition. Mr. Callan, he said as they approached. Miss Lynn, thank you for coming early. Didn't have much choice, Darius said. You wanted to talk. Yes, well, the Reverend clasped his hands together. It's customary for me to speak with couples before they marry, to ensure they understand the commitment they're making. We understand, Darius said flatly. Perhaps, but this is an unusual situation. You've known each other only a few days. Marriage is a serious undertaking, and I want to be certain you've both considered— We've considered it, Lin Mei said, surprising herself. We're here, aren't we? Reverend Mills blinked at her. Yes, of course, but I feel obligated to ask, Miss Lynn, are you entering into this marriage of your own free will? Mr. Callan hasn't coerced you in any way? No one's coerced me. And you understand that marriage is a lifelong commitment? That you'll be bound to Mr. Callan in the eyes of the law and the community? Lin Mei met his eyes. I understand perfectly. The Reverend looked between them, clearly wanting to say more but not finding the words. Finally, he sighed. Very well, the ceremony will begin at 10. I assume you'll want to wait inside? Actually, Darius said, we'll wait out here. Too stuffy in there. They sat on the church steps while Reverend Mills went inside to prepare. Lin Mei could feel people watching from across the street. She forced herself to breathe normally. You all right? Darius asked. Fine. You don't look fine. I don't like being stared at. Yeah, well, get used to it. They're going to stare for a while. How long is a while? Until something more interesting happens, or until you prove you're not going anywhere. Lin Mei looked at him. And how do I prove that? By staying. Simple, direct. So completely Darius. That's the plan, she said. A wagon pulled up, and Martha Brennan climbed down, followed by a man who had to be her husband. Tall, weathered, with the same no-nonsense look Martha had. They approached the steps. Darius, Martha said. Lin Mei, this is my husband Jack. Jack nodded to both of them. Congratulations. Thanks for coming, Darius said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. Wouldn't miss it, Martha said. Someone needs to witness this and make sure Mills doesn't mess it up. I won't mess it up, Reverend Mills called from inside the church. We'll see, Martha muttered. More people began arriving. A few ranchers Darius knew, some townspeople who came more out of curiosity than goodwill. Mrs. Garrett and her companions arrived last, dressed like they were attending a social event, their expressions a mix of judgment and fascination. By the time 10 o'clock arrived, maybe 20 people had gathered inside the church. Not a crowd, but more than Lin Mei had hoped for. Reverend Mills appeared in the doorway. We're ready. Darius stood and offered Lin Mei his hand. She took it, and together they walked into the church. The interior was simple. Wooden pews, plain walls, a cross at the front. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching dust motes in the air. Everyone turned to watch as they walked down the aisle. Lin Mei kept her eyes forward, focusing on the Reverend, on Darius's hand in hers, on anything except the faces watching her. They reached the front and turned to face Reverend Mills. He opened his book, cleared his throat, and began. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. His voice echoed in the small space. Marriage is not to be entered into lightly, but reverently, deliberately, and in accordance with the purposes for which it was instituted. Lin Mei barely heard the words. Her heart was pounding too loud. She could feel sweat gathering at the back of her neck despite the cool air. Do you, Darius Callan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Darius's voice was steady. I do. Reverend Mills turned to Lin May. Do you, Lin May, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? This was it. The moment where she could still back out, where she could say no and run and try to figure out some other way to survive. But she'd already made this choice. 3 days ago, when she'd stepped off that coach. Yesterday, when she'd ridden across the property and seen what her life could be. I do, she said. The rings? Darius pulled 2 simple gold bands from his pocket. Lin May hadn't known about the rings. He must have gotten them in town before picking her up from the coach. He took her hand and slid one onto her finger. It was slightly too big, but it would do. She took the other ring and put it on his hand. His fingers were rough, calloused, the hands of a working man. By the power vested in me, Reverend Mills said, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Darius hesitated. Lin May could see the uncertainty in his eyes. They hadn't discussed this part. But they were married now. People were watching. There were expectations. She made the decision for both of them, leaning up on her toes and pressing a brief, chaste kiss to his lips. It was over in a second, barely more than a touch. But it sealed something between them. A promise. A beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Mills announced, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Darius Callan. Scattered applause filled the church. Martha was clapping enthusiastically. Jack nodded his approval. Mrs. Garrett looked like she'd bitten into something sour. Lin May didn't care. It was done. She was married. She was safe, or as safe as she was going to get. They signed the papers in the Reverend's small office. Lin May's hand cramping slightly as she wrote her name for the last time as just herself. Then Darius signed and Reverend Mills witnessed, and it was official. Congratulations, Reverend Mills said, shaking both their hands. I wish you both every happiness. Thanks, Darius said. He looked at Lin May. Ready to go? Yes. They emerged from the church to find Martha waiting with a basket. Made you some things for the house, she said, thrusting it at Lin May. Preserves, bread, a few other odds and ends. Consider it a wedding gift. Thank you, Lin May said, genuinely touched. Don't mention it. Just don't make me regret helping you. Martha's expression softened slightly. You did good in there. Didn't flinch. I wanted to. But you didn't. That counts. Mrs. Garrett approached then, her companions flanking her like guards. Lin May braced herself. Mrs. Callan, Mrs. Garrett said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. Welcome to Willow Creek. I do hope you'll join us for the Ladies' Aid Society meetings. We meet every Thursday. It was a trap. Lin May could see it in the woman's eyes. She wanted Lin May to accept so she could parade her around like a curiosity, or refuse so she could call her unfriendly. Thank you for the invitation, Lin May said carefully. I'll have to see what my schedule allows. Of course. Ranch work must keep you so busy, though I imagine it's quite different from what you're used to. Very different. And where did you say you were from? Philadelphia. How exotic. We don't get many Chinese women out here. You must feel quite out of place. Lin May felt Darius tense beside her. She put a hand on his arm, gentle but firm. This was her battle to fight. I feel exactly where I'm supposed to be, she said. Mrs. Garrett's smile tightened. Well, how nice. I'm sure you'll fit right in, eventually. She swept away, her companions following. Martha snorted. That woman is a viper, she said. Don't let her get to you. I won't. Good. Now get out of here. You've got a marriage to start. They climbed into the wagon and headed out of town. Lin May didn't look back. She kept her eyes forward, on the road, on the future. Darius was quiet until they were well clear of Willow Creek. Then he spoke. I almost punched Mrs. Garrett. I know. I felt it. She had no right talking to you like that. She's going to talk. They're all going to talk. We knew that. Doesn't make it right. No. But we can't control what they think. We can only control what we do. Darius glanced at her. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of caring what people think. That makes two of us. They rode in silence for a while. Then Lin Mei said, You bought rings. Yeah, figured we should do it proper. When did you get them? A few weeks ago, before you even arrived. Thought I should be prepared. What if I hadn't come? Then I'd have 2 rings I didn't need. He looked at her. But you did come. I did. No regrets? Lin Mei looked at the ring on her finger, the simple gold band that marked her as someone's wife. A week ago, the idea would have terrified her. Now it felt like the only solid thing in her life. No regrets, she said. They arrived back at the ranch as the sun was climbing toward noon. Darius helped her down from the wagon, and they stood there for a moment, looking at the house. So, Darius said, we're married. We are. You want to change anything about how we've been doing things? Lin Mei understood what he was really asking, the bedroom, the sleeping arrangements, the physical side of marriage that they'd been carefully not discussing. Not yet, she said. Is that all right? Fine with me? Like I said, we've got time. Relief flooded through her. Thank you. Stop thanking me for being decent. I will when you stop being decent. He almost smiled at that. Fair enough. Come on, let's see what Martha packed in that basket. Inside, they unpacked Martha's gift, jars of preserves, fresh bread, butter wrapped in cloth, and a small bottle of whiskey with a note that said, for when you need it. She's not wrong, Darius said, looking at the whiskey. Some days you do need it. Is this one of those days? Maybe. Getting married's exhausting. We didn't do anything. Yeah, but everyone was watching. That's exhausting in itself. Lin Mei couldn't argue with that. She cut the bread and spread some of Martha's strawberry preserves on it, and they ate standing at the counter like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. What now? Lin Mei asked. Now we go back to normal. Got cattle to check on. Fence to inspect. Same as yesterday. Me? Whatever you want. You're not my employee. You're my partner. Do what needs doing. Lin Mei looked around the house. Their house now, legally and officially. She could see a dozen things that needed attention. The account still needed organizing. The pantry needed restocking. The windows could use curtains. I'll start with the bookkeeping, she said. Get everything in order. You sure? That's a lot for your wedding day. What else am I going to do? Sit around feeling married? Darius laughed. An actual laugh, rough and unexpected. You got a point. He headed out to work, and Lin Mei spread the account books across the table. The numbers told a story, a man barely breaking even, keeping himself afloat through sheer stubborn work. No luxuries, no waste, just survival. She could work with that. By evening, she had the accounts organized, the expenses categorized, and a clear picture of where they stood financially. It wasn't great, but it wasn't disaster either. They could make it work if they were careful. Darius came in as the sun was setting, covered in the usual dust and sweat. He washed up and looked at the papers she'd spread out. How bad is it? He asked. Not bad. You're solvent. Barely, but solvent. That's better than I thought. You could be doing better. You're paying too much for feed, and the cattle prices you're getting aren't great. I know, but I don't have much choice. Bradley's the only supplier in town, and the buyers know I need to sell. We'll figure it out. There's got to be a better way. We? I'm your partner, remember? Your problems are my problems now. Darius sat down heavily. I'm not used to having someone care about this stuff. Get used to it. They ate dinner. The stew Lin Mei had made that morning, reheated and still better than anything Darius could produce. The silence between them was comfortable now, familiar. Can I ask you something? Lin Mei said. Go ahead. What was she like? Sarah? Darius set down his spoon. Why do you want to know? Because everyone keeps comparing me to her. I want to know what I'm being compared to. He was quiet for a long moment. She was pretty, popular. Everyone liked her. She was the kind of woman men noticed. And she chose you. For a while. Her father owned the dry goods store. She thought marrying a rancher would be romantic, adventure, fresh start. He laughed bitterly. Turned out the reality wasn't so romantic. What changed? She came out here once before we were supposed to get married, saw what the life actually was, realized it meant work and isolation and dirt under your nails. She tried to convince me to sell the ranch, move closer to town, get a job at the mill. And you said no. I said no. This place, it's mine. I built it. I wasn't giving it up. He met Lin May's eyes. That make me selfish? It makes you honest about what you want. There's nothing wrong with that. She thought there was, called me stubborn, said I cared more about the land than about her. Did you? Yeah, probably. He shrugged. She deserved someone who'd put her first. I couldn't do that, so she left. Lin May absorbed that. And now you've got me. Someone who doesn't expect to be put first. Is that what you think this is? Isn't it? We're partners. Equal. That means neither of us comes first. Darius looked at her like he was seeing her fresh. Yeah, that's exactly what it means. Then we're different from you and Sarah. That's good. You really think this can work? I have to think that. Otherwise, what's the point? They finished dinner and sat by the fire. Lin May worked on mending a shirt while Darius read through a farming journal someone had left at the general store. The domesticity of it was strange. This was her life now. This quiet evening routine with a man she barely knew but was legally bound to. Lin May? She looked up. Darius was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I need to tell you something, he said. Her stomach tightened. What? I'm not good at this. At talking. At knowing what you need or how to help. Sarah used to get mad because I couldn't read her moods. Couldn't figure out what she wanted unless she spelled it out. So spell it out for me. Are you saying you want me to be direct? Yeah, if something's wrong, tell me. If you need something, say it. I can't guess. I can do that. Good. Because I'll do the same. If this is going to work, we need to be honest with each other. Even when it's hard. Lin May set down her mending. Then I'll be honest. I'm scared. Of what? That I'll fail. That I won't be able to handle this life. That you'll regret marrying me. Darius leaned forward. You want my honesty? I'm scared too. Scared you'll wake up one day and realize you made a mistake. Scared I'll let you down the same way I let Sarah down. You didn't let Sarah down. You were honest about who you are. She wanted you to be someone else. What if you want that too? Eventually? I won't. How do you know? Because I've spent my whole life trying to be what other people wanted. It destroyed me. I'm done with that. I'd rather have an honest life with you than a false one with anyone else. Darius was quiet for a long time. Then, I think we're going to be okay. Yeah? Yeah. We're both too stubborn to fail. Lin May smiled. A real smile. The first one since arriving in Wyoming. That's probably true. That night, they went to bed in separate rooms again. But as Lin May lay in the darkness, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone drowning and grasping at anything, but quiet, solid hope. The kind built on honesty and partnership and two people who'd chosen each other with clear eyes. She was married now, to Darius Callan. A man she was still learning, a man who was nothing like what she'd expected when she'd answered that advertisement. But maybe that was better. Maybe expectations were the problem all along. Maybe what she needed was exactly this, a fresh start with someone who saw her clearly and chose her anyway. The next morning, Lin May woke to find Darius already gone. A note on the table said he'd ridden out to check on the cattle in the far pasture and would be back by afternoon. She spent the morning cleaning and organizing, then decided to tackle the pantry. It was a mess. Supplies shoved in wherever they fit, no system, half the containers unlabeled. She pulled everything out and started over, grouping like items, labeling jars, making a list of what they needed. She was elbow-deep in flour sacks when she heard a horse approaching. She wiped her hands on her apron and went to the window. It wasn't Darius. A man she didn't recognize was dismounting, younger than Darius, maybe mid-20s, dressed well for the territory. He tied his horse and approached the house with the confidence of someone who had every right to be there. Lin May opened the door before he could knock. "Can I help you?" she asked. The man stopped, clearly surprised to see her. His eyes widened, then narrowed. "I'm looking for Darius Callan," he said. "He's not here." When will he be back? This afternoon. Can I take a message? And you are? Lin Mei straightened her shoulders. His wife. The man's expression went through several shifts. Surprise, disbelief, something that might have been anger. His wife, he repeated. Yes, we were married yesterday. I see. He didn't offer his name. Tell Darius that James Whitfield stopped by. I'll be back. He turned and walked back to his horse without another word. Lin Mei watched him ride away, her instinct screaming that something was wrong. When Darius returned, she told him about the visitor. His face went hard. Whitfield was here? You know him? He's the son of the man who owns the land west of mine. Been trying to buy me out for 2 years. Why? Water rights. My land has the best access to the creek. Without it, his father's land is worth half what it could be. And you won't sell. Hell no. This is my land. I'm not giving it up so some rich family can expand their empire. Lin Mei felt a chill. What did he want? Probably to make another offer, or to threaten me. Hard to say with that family. He seemed angry when I told him we were married. Darius looked at her sharply. What did he say? Just that he'd be back. Damn it. Darius paced the room. I should have known they'd try something. Marriage changes the equation. Makes it harder for them to pressure me into selling. How? Because now it's not just my decision, it's ours. And they can't intimidate a married couple as easily as they can intimidate one man alone. Lin Mei understood then. The marriage wasn't just about partnership, it was protection. Did you marry me to make it harder for them to take your land? She asked quietly. Darius stopped pacing and looked at her. No, that's not why I... He ran a hand through his hair. That wasn't the reason, I swear. But it's a benefit. Yeah, it's a benefit. But it wasn't the reason. Lin Mei wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. What happens now? She asked. Now I wait for Whitfield to come back and make his play. Whatever it is. And then? And then I tell him the same thing I've been telling him for 2 years. The land's not for sale. Lin Mei looked at her husband. This man she'd married 3 days ago, who was already being tested by forces she didn't fully understand. We tell him, she corrected. We tell him it's not for sale. This is our land now, both of us. Darius stared at her. Then slowly he nodded. Yeah, both of us. The wedding certificate sat on the kitchen table between them, official and permanent. Lin Mei stared at the ink signatures, hers and Darius's, and tried to process what they meant. Married, legally bound, partners in every sense that mattered. Darius was outside chopping wood, the steady rhythm of the axe carrying through the open window. They'd been back from town for 2 hours, and neither of them seemed to know what to do with themselves now that it was done. The ceremony itself had been brief and awkward. Reverend Mills had stumbled through the vows, while a handful of townspeople watched from the pews. Martha and Jack Brennan in the front row, Mrs. Garrett and her friends in the back whispering behind their hands. Lin Mei had worn her best dress, dark green with buttons up to her throat. Darius had worn a clean shirt and looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. When the Reverend had pronounced them married, Darius had hesitated before kissing her cheek, a quick, formal gesture that barely counted as contact. Then they'd signed the papers and walked out into the September sunlight as husband and wife. Now Lin Mei picked up the certificate and carried it to the dresser upstairs, tucking it into the top drawer beneath her few spare clothes. When she came back down, Darius was standing in the doorway, axe in hand, watching her. Figured I'd get enough wood for the week, he said. Gonna get cold soon. Do you need help? No, but I could use company if you're willing. She followed him outside. The afternoon sun was warm despite the chill in the air. Darius set another log on the chopping block and brought the axe down with practiced efficiency, splitting it clean. Lin Mei sat on the porch steps and watched him work. You're good at that, she said. Had a lot of practice. He set up another log. Used to hire it out in town before I bought this place. Easy money, if you don't mind the work. What made you want to ranch instead? Tired of working for other people. Tired of living in town where everyone knew your business. He paused, axe raised. Same reason you left Philadelphia, I'd guess. Partly. He brought the axe down, then looked at her. You ever gonna tell me the whole story? Or is what you said the first day all I get? Lin May had known this question was coming. She'd been preparing for it since Martha's warning about the town wanting to know her past. But sitting here in the sunlight with her husband, that word still felt strange. She found herself wanting to tell him. His name was Richard Whitmore, she said. He was one of Mrs. Chen's wealthiest clients. He'd come in for suits, alterations, custom work. I was the one who took his measurements. Darius stopped chopping and leaned on the axe handle, listening. One day he asked me to come to his house to fit a jacket. Mrs. Chen thought it was a good sign, meant he trusted our work, so I went. She picked at a splinter in the porch step. He tried to kiss me. When I refused, he grabbed my wrist, told me I should be grateful for his attention, that a woman like me didn't have better options. A woman like you? Chinese, immigrant, poor. The words tasted bitter. I pushed him away and left. 2 days later, his wife came to the shop saying I'd tried to seduce her husband, that I'd shown up at their house uninvited and thrown myself at him. And people believed her. Of course they did. She was white, wealthy, respectable. I was nobody. Lin May looked at her hands. Mrs. Chen let me go that afternoon. Within a week, the whole garment district knew. No one would hire me. My landlady asked me to leave. Even the other Chinese families started avoiding me because they didn't want the association. Darius was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "He's the one who should have been run out of town." Maybe, but that's not how it works. It should be. Well, it's not. She stood up, brushing off her skirt. So I came here, and now I'm married to a man who knows the worst thing anyone's ever said about me. The worst thing someone lied about you mean? Does it matter? The damage was the same. Darius stuck the axe in the chopping block and came over to the porch. He sat down on the step below her, close enough that she could see the sawdust in his hair. It matters to me, he said. Truth matters. What actually happened matters. Why? You barely know me. Because I married you. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if my wife is lying to me. He met her eyes. You told me the truth. That means something. Lin May felt something loosen in her chest, a knot she hadn't realized was there. Thank you, she said. For what? For believing me. Darius shrugged. You gave me no reason not to. They sat there in the afternoon quiet, not touching but close enough that Lin May could feel the warmth coming off him. After a while, Darius went back to chopping wood, and she went inside to start dinner, and the day continued like any other. Except it wasn't any other day. They were married now. Everything had changed, and nothing had changed, all at once. That night, they faced the question they'd been avoiding. Darius stood at the bottom of the stairs, one hand on the railing, looking uncomfortable. So, he said, the bedroom. Yes. I can keep sleeping down here if you want more time. Lin May had thought about this all day. The truth was, she didn't know what she wanted, but she knew what was practical. We're married, she said. We should share the room. You sure? No, but it seems right. Darius nodded slowly. All right. I'll sleep on one side. You take the other. We'll figure out the rest as we go. That sounds reasonable. They went upstairs together, moving around each other carefully in the small space. Lin May changed behind a sheet she'd hung in the corner, grateful for the privacy. When she emerged in her nightgown, Darius was already in bed, facing the wall, giving her space. She climbed in on her side, keeping a careful distance between them. The bed was small enough that she could feel when he shifted position, hear every breath. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with touching and everything to do with presence. Lin May? Darius's voice came out of the darkness. Yes? I know this is strange, all of it, but we'll make it work. How do you know? Because we both want it to work. That's more than most people start with. She thought about that. He was right. They'd both chosen this deliberately, with eyes open. Good night, Darius. Good night. She lay awake for a long time, listening to his breathing even out as he fell asleep. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her under, and she dreamed of nothing at all. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that surprised Lin May with its steadiness. She woke before dawn and made coffee while Darius did the early chores. They ate breakfast together, usually eggs and bread, then split up to handle the day's work. Darius taught her the basics of ranch work in the evenings: how to feed the chickens without getting pecked, how to check the cattle for injury, how to tell good hay from bad. Her hands, soft from sewing, developed calluses. Her arms, unused to heavy lifting, grew stronger. The household accounts were a disaster when she first looked at them, but Lin May had always been good with numbers. She set up a proper ledger, tracked expenses, found places where Darius was spending money unnecessarily. Within 2 weeks, she'd reorganized the entire system. "How much did I save, Yia?" Darius asked one evening, looking over her work. $23 this month if you stop buying grain from Bradley's and start getting it from the supplier in Cheyenne. That's a full day's ride. I know, but you make the trip once a month anyway for other supplies. Might as well consolidate. Darius studied the numbers, then looked at her with something like admiration. You're better at this than I ever was. It's just math. It's more than that. It's seeing patterns, planning ahead. I've been running this place on instinct for 5 years. You've been here 3 weeks and already made it more efficient. Lin May felt a small glow of pride. In Philadelphia, her skills had been taken for granted. Here, they mattered. But ranch life was harder than she'd anticipated. The work never stopped. There was always something that needed fixing, feeding, mending, or hauling. Her body ached in new ways every night. And the isolation, the sheer emptiness of the land around them, sometimes felt suffocating despite what she'd told Darius about freedom. The hardest part was the silence. Darius wasn't much of a talker on a good day, and when he was tired or frustrated, he could go hours without saying a word. Lin May, who'd grown up in crowded tenements where noise was constant, found the quiet unnerving. One evening, after a particularly long day of repairs to the barn roof, they sat at dinner without speaking for 20 minutes straight. Lin May finally set down her fork. "Do you ever get lonely out here?" she asked. Darius looked up, surprised. "Sometimes. Less now that you're here." "But don't you miss talking to people? Having conversations?" "Not really. Most conversation is just noise. People talking to fill space." "Is that what you think I'm doing?" "No. When you talk, you usually have something to say. I like that about you." It was the first compliment he'd given her, and Lin May didn't know what to do with it. She searched for the right words. "I'm used to more people, more activity. This is an adjustment." "You want to go into town more often?" "No, the town doesn't want me there." "The hell with what the town wants. If you need supplies or company, or just a change of scenery, we'll go." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" Because every time they went to Willow Creek, Lin May felt the stares, the whispers, Mrs. Garrett's barely concealed disdain. Even the well-meaning attempts at conversation from Martha Brennan felt like tests she might fail. "I just don't want to make things harder for you," she said finally. Darius set down his coffee cup with more force than necessary. "You're not making anything hard. You're my wife. Anyone who has a problem with that can go to hell. They'll make it difficult for you, for business. Let them try. I've been doing business here for 5 years. They need me more than I need them." Lin May wasn't sure that was true, but she appreciated the sentiment. The conversation shifted after that, and Darius made more of an effort to talk during meals. It wasn't always comfortable. Sometimes they ran out of things to say and sat in awkward silence, but it was something. At night, they shared the bed like roommates. Darius kept to his side, Lin May to hers. Sometimes their hands would brush when they were both reaching for the blanket, and they'd pull back like they'd been burned. Once, Lin May woke to find Darius's arm across her waist, his body warm against her back. She lay still, not wanting to wake him, and tried to figure out what she felt. Fear? Comfort? Something in between? When morning came, he'd already moved away, and neither of them mentioned it. 6 weeks after the wedding, Martha Brennan showed up at the ranch with news that changed everything. Lin May was in the garden, a small plot she'd started near the house, when she heard the horse approaching. She stood up, brushing dirt from her hands, and saw Martha dismounting with the brisk efficiency of someone who'd been doing it since childhood. "You've got a garden started," Martha said by way of greeting. "Good. Fresh vegetables make all the difference out here." "What brings you by?" "2 things. First, Doc Morrison mentioned he's looking for someone to help at the clinic a few days a week. His assistant moved to Denver." "I'm not a nurse." "Don't have to be." Just need to be organized and good with people. You're organized, I've seen that. The people part you'll have to work on. Lin May bristled. I'm fine with people. You're scared of people. There's a difference. Martha's tone wasn't unkind, just matter of fact. But that's the second thing. The town's opening a school come spring. They need a teacher. Lin May's heart jumped. A teacher? Reverend Mills mentioned you could read and write and do sums. That's more than most people around here. They're not picky about qualifications. They just need someone who won't quit after 2 months. I've never taught before. You sew, right? You teach someone how to sew, you can teach them how to read. Same principle. It wasn't the same principle at all, but Lin May's mind was already racing. A school, students, purpose beyond just keeping the household running. When would it start? She asked. March, maybe April. Depends on when they get the schoolhouse finished. They're building it now, just a one-room place on the edge of town. Basic, but serviceable. Why are you telling me this? Martha gave her a long look. Because I think you're wasting your potential out here just being a rancher's wife. You're smart, organized, capable. The town needs that. And frankly, you need something that's yours. The ranch is mine. Darius gave me half of everything. That's his generosity, not your achievement. I'm talking about something you build yourself. Martha climbed back on her horse. Think about it. Let Doc Morrison know about the clinic work if you're interested. The teaching position, too. Town council meets next month to finalize the hire. She rode off before Lin May could respond. That evening, Lin May told Darius about both opportunities while they worked on repairing a section of fence that had come loose in last night's wind. He listened without interrupting, his hands steady on the wire he was stringing. What do you want to do? He asked when she finished. I don't know. What do you think I should do? Doesn't matter what I think. It's your choice. It affects both of us. If I'm working in town, that's less time here. We'll manage. He secured the wire and moved to the next post. Question is whether you want to do it. Lin May thought about spending another winter isolated on the ranch with only Darius and the animals for company. Then she thought about a room full of children learning to read, about having a purpose beyond daily survival. I want to try, she said. The teaching, at least. The clinic work might be too much. Then try it, see how it goes. You're really okay with this? Darius looked at her over the fence line. Lin May, I married you for partnership, not servitude. You want to teach? Teach. You want to work at the clinic? Do that too. As long as we keep this place running, I don't care how we divide the work. Most men wouldn't feel that way. I'm not most men, and you're not most women. He went back to the fence. Besides, you'll probably be good at it. You're patient and you explain things clearly. Those are the main qualifications for teaching, far as I can tell. She hadn't expected his support to come so easily. In Philadelphia, every decision had required negotiation, justification, approval from someone higher up the social ladder. Here, Darius just trusted her judgment. It was unsettling and liberating in equal measure. The next week, Lin May rode into Willow Creek alone for the first time. Darius had offered to come with her, but she'd refused. If she was going to do this, work in town, interact with people who judged her from the moment she arrived, she needed to do it on her own terms. Doc Morrison's clinics was a small building near the general store. Lin May tied Daisy to the hitching post and went inside. The doctor was in his 60s, balding, with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by much of it. He looked up from a desk covered in papers when she entered. You must be Mrs. Callan, he said. Lin May is fine. Lin May, then. Martha said you might stop by. He gestured at the chaos around him. As you can see, I need help. What would the work involve? Keeping records, organizing supplies, assisting with patients when needed. Nothing medical, just holding instruments, keeping them calm. Maybe cleaning up after procedures. He paused. I'll be honest with you. Some folks won't like being treated by a clinic that employs a Chinese woman. But I don't give a damn what they like. I care about whether the work gets done. I can do the work. I believe you. Martha doesn't recommend people lightly. He shuffled through papers and found a ledger. 2 days a week to start. Tuesdays and Fridays, $1 a day. It wasn't much, but it was more than Lin May had earned in months. And more importantly, it was hers. When do I start? Next Tuesday if you're ready. I'm ready. They shook hands, and Lin May left the clinic feeling lighter than she had since arriving in Wyoming. She had work, real work, not just supporting Darius's dream, but building something of her own. On her way back to the ranch, she stopped at the site where they were building the school. It was just a foundation and some framing so far, but she could see what it would become. One room with windows on both sides, a small porch, space for maybe 20 students. She stood there imagining it filled with children, their voices echoing off the walls, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. When she got home, Darius was cleaning out the barn. She told him about the clinic work, and he nodded like he'd expected it. "You start next week?" he asked. "Tuesday." "All right, I'll handle the morning chores those days so you can get into town early." "You don't have to do that." "I know, but it makes sense. No point in you rushing." He went back to shoveling. "You check out the school site?" "How did you know?" "You had that look on your face. The one you get when you're thinking about something that matters to you." Lin May leaned against the barn door, watching him work. "Do you ever want more than this? More than just the ranch?" Darius paused, considering. "I used to. When I first came out here, I had all these plans. I was going to build an empire. Biggest spread in the territory. Make a name for myself." He shrugged. "Then I realized I didn't actually want any of that. I just wanted peace. This gives me peace. Even with me here disrupting everything, you're not disrupting anything. You're making it better." He looked at her. "I was getting by before. Now I'm actually living. There's a difference." Lin May didn't know what to say to that, so she just smiled and went to start dinner. That night, as they lay in bed in the darkness, Darius spoke again. "Lin May." "Yes?" "I'm proud of you, for the clinic work, for putting yourself out there even though the town hasn't been welcoming. I haven't done anything yet." "You did something by showing up. That takes courage." She turned toward him in the darkness, though she couldn't see his face. "Why do you think that?" "Because I know what it's like to be afraid of what people think. Took me years to stop caring. You're doing it in weeks. I still care. I just don't let it stop me anymore." "That's what courage is." They were quiet for a while. Then Lin May reached out in the darkness and found his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm, calloused, steady. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For giving me a chance to be more than what Philadelphia said I was." His grip tightened slightly. "You were always more than that. You just needed the space to prove it." They fell asleep that way, hands clasped, the first real connection they'd allowed themselves since the wedding. The work at Doc Morrison's clinic started simply enough. Lin May showed up Tuesday morning and spent 4 hours organizing the supply cabinet, which had devolved into chaos over the months since his last assistant left. She labeled jars, sorted bandages, threw out expired medicines, and created an inventory system that actually made sense. Doc Morrison watched her work with approval. "You're efficient. I like that." "It's just logic. Everything should have a place." "You'd be surprised how many people don't think that way." The second week, she assisted with her first patient, a rancher who'd cut his hand on barbed wire. She held the instruments while Doc Morrison cleaned and stitched the wound, trying not to flinch at the blood and the man's cursing. "You did fine," the doctor told her after the patient left. "Some people pass out their first time seeing stitches. You didn't even blink." "I was too focused on not dropping the forceps." "That's the right priority." By the fourth week, she'd settled into the rhythm. The work was satisfying in a different way from ranch work. It required precision and attention to detail rather than physical strength. And slowly, people in town started to get used to seeing her there. Not everyone, of course. Mrs. Garrett still crossed the street rather than walk past the clinic when Lin May was outside. Tom Bradley at the livery still gave her uncomfortable looks like he wasn't sure whether to be friendly or suspicious. But some people surprised her. A young mother brought her sick child in and thanked Lin May specifically for being gentle when she held the boy still for his examination. A farmer's wife struck up a conversation about garden vegetables and asked Lin May's advice on dealing with cabbage worms. Small moments, but they accumulated. In November, the town council officially offered Lin May the teaching position. She'd have to wait until spring to start, but the job was hers if she wanted it. She told Darius that night while they were doing dishes. "They offered me the school," she said, scrubbing a pot. "You gonna take it?" "Yes, if that's still all right with you." Course it is. He dried a plate and set it on the shelf. You nervous? Terrified. I have no idea what I'm doing. You'll figure it out. You always do. Lin Mei set down the pot and turned to face him. Why do you have so much faith in me? You barely know me. I know enough. He put down the dish towel. I know you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I know you're smart and practical, and you don't quit when things get difficult. That's all I need to know. I could fail. You could. So could I. We're both taking risks every day just by trying to make this work. He met her eyes. But I'd rather risk failing than not try at all. Lin Mei thought about that, about risk and trying and the courage it took to keep moving forward when you had no guarantee of success. When did you get so wise? She asked. I'm not wise. I'm just stubborn. He picked up the towel again. There's a difference. She laughed, and the sound surprised both of them. It was the first time she'd really laughed since arriving in Wyoming. What? Darius asked, but he was almost smiling too. Nothing, just, this isn't what I expected. Is that good or bad? Good. Definitely good. December brought the first real snow, and with it, a routine that felt almost normal. Lin Mei worked at the clinic twice a week and spent the rest of her time managing the household and helping with ranch work. Darius taught her to shoot. You need to know how, just in case. And she turned out to be decent at it once she stopped flinching at the noise. They still slept on opposite sides of the bed, but the distance between them had shrunk. Some nights they'd talk in the darkness about their days, about plans for spring, about nothing in particular. Other nights they'd fall asleep to the sound of each other's breathing, and that was enough. On Christmas Eve, Darius gave her a book, a collection of teaching guides he'd ordered from a catalog. Lin Mei gave him a new work shirt she'd made herself, fitted properly because she'd secretly measured him while he was sleeping. They sat by the fire that night drinking coffee spiked with whiskey that Martha had brought over earlier in the week, and for the first time since Philadelphia, Lin Mei felt something close to contentment. This is nice, she said. Yeah? Yeah. She looked at him in the firelight. I didn't think I'd ever feel settled again, but I do. Me too. Are we doing this right? The marriage thing? Darius considered. I don't know what right looks like, but this feels good to me. To me too. He reached over and took her hand, not urgently, just a simple gesture of connection. She laced her fingers through his and leaned her head on his shoulder. They stayed like that until the fire burned down to embers, neither of them wanting to move, neither of them needing to say anything more. January brought cold so fierce it hurt to breathe. Lin Mei stood at the kitchen window watching Darius break ice on the water troughs, his breath coming out in white clouds. She'd lived through Philadelphia winters, but this was different. This was cold that could kill you if you weren't careful. She poured hot coffee into a thermos and pulled on the heavy coat Darius had bought her in town, thick wool lined with fur, practical rather than pretty. When she stepped outside, the cold hit her like a physical force. Brought you coffee, she called. Darius looked up from the trough, his face red from the wind. You didn't have to come out here. I know. She handed him the thermos. But you've been out here for an hour. He drank deeply, then screwed the cap back on. Ice is bad today. Gonna have to check the troughs every few hours or the cattle won't have water. I can help. It's brutal work in this weather. So is everything else we do. She picked up the axe he'd set aside. Show me what to do. He did, and for the next hour they worked side by side breaking ice and hauling fresh water. Lin Mei's hands went numb despite her gloves. Her face felt frozen. But there was something satisfying about the work. The immediate problem, the immediate solution. When they finally went back inside, they stood by the stove warming their hands, neither of them speaking until the feeling came back to their fingers. You're tougher than you look, Darius said. You've said that before. Yeah, but I keep being surprised by it. Lin Mei flexed her fingers, watching the color return. In Philadelphia, I thought I was weak. Everyone told me I was too soft, too sheltered, not strong enough for real hardship. They were wrong. Were they? I let Richard Whitmore destroy my life with a lie. You didn't let him do anything. He had power and he used it. That's not weakness on your part. That's the world being unfair. She looked at him. When did you become such an optimist? I'm not. I'm just honest. He poured them both more coffee. You want to know what I think? What? I think you've been strong your whole life. You just didn't know it because nobody ever told you. Nobody ever gave you credit for surviving when surviving was the hardest thing you could do. Lin May felt her throat tighten. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. It's just the truth. They drank their coffee in silence, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. Outside, the wind howled and snow started to fall again. Inside, the stove radiated heat and the house smelled like coffee and wood smoke and home. Darius? Lin May said quietly. Yeah? I'm glad I married you. He set down his cup and turned to face her fully. Yeah? Yeah. I'm glad I married you too. Then he kissed her, and it wasn't like their wedding kiss, brief and formal and meaningless. This was slow and deliberate and real. When he pulled back, he looked uncertain. Is that okay? He asked. Yes. She reached up and touched his face. More than okay. They went upstairs together in the middle of the afternoon, leaving the chores undone for the first time since Lin May had arrived. What happened between them wasn't perfect or smooth or anything like the romance novels she'd read as a girl. It was awkward and hesitant and honest, two people learning each other.